I'm Chris Wade from Time for Impact and my co-host.
Hi, I'm Matt Cobble.
And welcome to the Time for Impact podcast. Well, welcome to another exciting episode of the Time for Impact podcast. As you know, every time we meet, we try to bring you a special guest who's going to bring innovation, creativity, and some fresh thinking to volunteering that we can all learn from as volunteering professionals. And today is no exception. Our guest today is Rachel Gegeshidze from the great time banking organisation Tempo. As usual, I'll start by just giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Tempo and the great work and innovation that you do.
Thank you so much. So, I'm Rachel and I work for Tempo. I'm the chief exec at Tempo. But I've worked for the organisation for, it's coming up for nearly 12 years. So from building our first network in Carmarthenshire back 12 years ago to now kind of leading our team and our programmes across England and Wales. So a little bit about what we do. So we are a community development organisation at heart, and we build community, really creating as many pathways as possible for people to be involved in their communities to then ultimately create pathways into volunteering. And we use time credits as our tool to engage more people in their community. And time credits is a really simple concept. It's a time-based currency that values the time and contributions that people give to their community and to a whole range of different organisations, services, groups, very small grassroots level groups in our communities, but people give an hour of their time to their community and they will receive a time credit for that time. And then alongside our work to embed time credits across communities, we also build networks of what we call recognition partners. So they're things like theatres, leisure centres, castles, education providers, mindfulness apps, a whole range of different opportunities for people to redeem their time credits, which obviously have impact on health and well-being and lots of other great things I'm sure we'll discuss.
And what are the impacts and the big takeaways from the service? Where does it make a real difference?
There's a difference at lots and lots of levels. Ultimately, getting new and different people involved in their volunteering journey, and actually initially, even before volunteering, kind of get people involved at a community level, enabling people to be seen for their skills and strengths and really valuing the contributions that they give in their communities and starting that journey to kind of being valued for what you can do rather than what you can't do, I think is one of the sort of key strengths of the work we do. But we also see significant impact on people's health and well-being. Examples include 58% people feeling more physically active as a result of being involved. 33% of people having less need to see a GP since volunteering and receiving time credits, but also people being more connected in their communities. So 60% of survey respondents last year told us that they now see or visit people more often as a result of being involved in their community. And, also the great thing about time credits is it opens up opportunities for people to try new things or experience new things. Often, I hear all the time comments such as, people like me don't go to the theatre, people like me don't go to the gym. And suddenly, through kind of being valued for what you can do and receiving time credits for your time, it opens up those opportunities. And we see a lot of, poverty of aspiration across our communities. So time credits opens doors. So 40% of people tell us that they can afford to do more as a result of receiving time credits for their time, and they access those opportunities now, whereas in the past they didn't ever, visit the gym or go to the theatre.
That's really interesting because on the face of it, when you think of time credits, I suppose the traditional view is it's a reward recognition opportunity to value your volunteers, attract new volunteers, and so on. But actually, what you're describing to us is that, but it's also really about getting people involved in their local communities, addressing health and other inequalities as much as it is, just encouraging people to volunteer, which we all know is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a nudge to support people on that sort of pathway to being involved. We often, especially in some of the work that we do, very much in the hearts of communities, don't refer to volunteering as volunteering to start with. It's helping out, getting involved, sharing your skills. Kind of different language, really, sometimes more accessible language. As time goes on, and people start on that sort of pathway to sharing their skills and sharing their time, we do talk about volunteering, but it's often not a word that we use right at the start of someone's journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that, is it easy to get local authorities, local healthcare providers to really understand that an investment from them in your program makes a big difference to financial and physical health of their community?
Absolutely. So, we've been working across England and Wales for the past 15 years. So we're very fortunate in Wales to be funded by Welsh Government, and we work across all 22 local authority areas of Wales. In England, we're funded through a mix of health boards, local authorities, grant funding streams. I think in the programme areas that we work, we have long established relationships with commissioners who really see the value that time credits bring to their communities, and a kind of great way of supporting the third sector and supporting the kind of capacity across the third sector, but also around engaging citizens in co-producing services and co-producing communities, and seeing, having people driving change and being empowered at a local level to be very much involved in the shaping of our communities. I think where it's obviously becoming more challenging, times are tough. Local authorities are massively stretched financially. We are having to do more to kind of show our value, across the programs that we work. And yeah, it's tough times financially out there. But time credits, open up opportunities, especially during a cost of living crisis. We know that time credits open the door to those activities that build hope, build resilience, and support people to kind of carry on during really tough times.
Yeah, I guess the cost of living scenario, and obviously the difficulty that councils in particular, but other providers are in, means that you have to work much harder to demonstrate the return on investment, the value, the impact, whatever you like to call it, of your programs. How do you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In many respects, we've kind of been ahead of the game a little bit. So we do an impact survey on a yearly basis, looking at the impact that time credits have, both on individuals who are receiving them for their time, but also on the third sector community groups and organisations that we're working with. And I think that sort of intelligence is really helpful for our funders to kind of understand both the impact on the individual, on people across our communities, but also where many of the local authorities and funders that we're working with are using time credits and the support from Tempo to kind of help to build capacity across the third sector. The impact that we report that we have on third sector organisations and charities, help for them to see, what's the real value that time credits have across the third sector. But also, we're really, really keen to further explore kind of the return on investment, and looking at social value calculations. We're exploring at the moment kind of other tools that we can use to actually look at the sort of real, pounds and pence impact, I suppose, that time credits have on our community. So that will be something that we'll begin to focus more on over this next financial year, and really beginning to explore what that can look like and what that means for our funders.
I think listeners will be, if you're ahead of volunteering, for instance, I think will be quite interesting to hear those kind of stories as they develop as well. Because the times I speak to volunteering leaders, and they say, well, everybody says our volunteering's great, but we struggle to get the influence over our CEOs, over our boards, in terms of getting the funding, the investment, the prioritization that we need. And I think those kind of things, like, I mean, you're obviously looking at things like social return on investments, others use balanced scorecards and so on. I think investing in those methods to demonstrate how you make an impact it's important to you, clearly, as an organization. But I think it's the
Absolutely.
sort of lessons that I think, if you like, managers of departments, like heads of volunteering, benefit from learning about, because we all need those to demonstrate our own impact. But also it means you can go external for funders, etc., if you can build that kind of business case. So it's kind of interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, just some of the kind of impact stats that came from our impact report that we launched in October of 2023. We asked community organisations that we're working with what was the difference time credits made to them. 72% told us that they'd recruited more volunteers as a result of time credits. They'd 33% had increased volunteer diversity. 30% had said that it improved their ability to raise funds as well. So it was kind of there was impacts at lots of different levels, as well as kind of specifically on volunteering.
Do you think, Rachel, that we talk about this kind of dual benefit of volunteering enough? It's something always I've been quite passionate about, and always would love to hear more about it. I think as organizations, we're always championing the impact that volunteers have for our organizations, but I don't often think we talk about sometimes the impact our organizations have for volunteers themselves through their volunteering, and I think that's really powerful. Is that something you've got experience on and insight from through Tempo?
Yeah, definitely. I think we try to focus our impact at two levels, both on the individual, but also on the community that benefits, but also then on the individual organisation. And we also look at it from our business partners. I suppose the unique thing about Tempo, or one of the unique aspects of what we do, is that we bring together citizens, third sector organisations, local authorities and health boards, our public services, and local businesses. And we use time credits as the sort of golden thread that connects all of those partners together. So one of the things that we're really keen to show is the impact that time credits and volunteering has across those different demographics, and telling the story from the different perspectives. And I think that's a really powerful way of showing the impact that you have, both as an organisation, but also how you fit into the wider ecosystem that we operate within.
You're very much the sort of conveners, rather than sort of orchestrating everything that happens. You convene the three parties: the community, the volunteers, the charities.
Absolutely.
And your role really is just bringing those people together and
Yeah.
enabling the
We're
magic to happen.
facilitators.
Yeah, facilitators.
Yeah, definitely. I think my first job title we started off our journey as Spice, but rebranded in 2018 because we do a lot of work within the recovery communities. But my first job title was time credit facilitator, and actually, that very much sums up the role that we have in communities around facilitating the role that time credits plays in our communities. And I think that's one of its real advantages, is that it's a very flexible tool, and it can lend itself to being used in different ways by to sort of focus on the needs and the challenges of each individual community.
Rachel, I think as someone involved in volunteer management myself, like, recognition is always sort of high on my list of, how do we do this well? How do we do this equitably? How do we do this in a way that is going to be meaningful for people? And in all honesty, that's something I've always struggled with, because people, certainly in the organizations I've always been involved in, people have very, very different interpretations of what like good recognition looks like, or how they want to sort of feel valued or appreciated as in return for the time they're giving. I'd be really interested in sort of any of your experiences on sort of how Tempo has helped with that challenge, and brought real kind of value and connection between volunteers and organizations through feeling appreciated and recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's a one size fits all approach. It doesn't work for everyone, and I think it's about, for us, building what we call our recognition networks. It's about having a whole range of different opportunities, and whenever we begin working in an area, or as part of the work that we do in an area, we look to co-produce who comes into our networks. So it isn't kind of my staff team sitting in a dark room kind of dreaming up, who should we approach. It's very much comes from the community. So it's about working with, running events in communities, listening to the voices of volunteers, the voices of citizens, around, if you was to earn some time credits, where would you want to use them? And kind of building our recognition network very much in response to the wants and needs of our local communities. But what also works incredibly well is that not only can you use time credits for yourself, I think last week we had 400 tickets purchased with time credits at the Wales Millennium Centre, to watch Edward Scissorhands, and seeing that response to that show coming out, and those tickets going like hotcakes, shows us the kind of real value of that partner, and then being in the network. But you can also gift your time credits to someone else. So actually that works incredibly well for people who perhaps don't want to take the time credits for themselves, but they love being able to gift them to a community pot, or to a family member or a friend that they feel will benefit. We talk a lot. We run campaigns around giving the gift of time, and sort of promote people gifting their time credits to other people. And we have also done some amazing projects through the gifting of time credits in the past, around supporting new and different people to kind of get involved in their communities. One great example was working with an older group of gentlemen, and using gifted time credits for them to go and watch a musical at a theatre. Many of them had not been to the theatre before. They had a pie and a pint and watched a show, and then we talked to them afterwards about getting involved in their local community. So it was very much about it being a catalyst to look at how they could get involved in their community and design their volunteering journey as well. So we, as I said earlier, we're creative in how we use time credits, and experimental, and looking at new and different ways, but designing who goes into our network with the community is absolutely key.
It sounds like, as ever with these things, that the answer is out there in volunteer communities, right? And when you talk about it like that, it's obvious, right? That if we want to know, how we make people feel valued and appreciated and connected and good about what they're doing through recognition, actually the first place we should probably start is by asking them them the question, right? And it seems so obvious when you put it like that, but I'm sure I'm not alone in not spending as much time doing that as perhaps I should be, and in terms of surfacing those answers. So yeah, that sounds really exciting, and I guess also that opportunity for people to pass things on, right? Like, I think that's also a really exciting opportunity, which is innovative in its own way, because I'm sure lots of people who are receiving this, are thinking about others because they're volunteers, and they're giving their time already. They're kind of proactive, active citizens thinking about others as well as themselves, I guess. So that's a really exciting part of it, and something certainly I wasn't aware of, and sounds really interesting, because there might be other ways in our own organizations how we can think about recognition in terms of not just something that a volunteer keeps, but also something that a volunteer can pay on as well in the future. Exciting stuff.
One of the things I suppose I was surprised about when I first heard, or recently heard, I'd heard about your work for many years, but when I recently heard you speaking, Rachel, I suppose was that community base, and I remember other, should we say, other charities in the conversation that we were involved in were saying, well, when you come into this town or such and such a town, and that's great. It means that it's clearly a latent demand, at least from the charity world, for what you do. But what I was struck with through that was that community base, actually, because the strength of building out from a community centre and building networks, because as you described, across the whole community, the charities, the local authorities, and the individual citizens, means that not only can you design or can you involved your those involved in your activities in shaping those citizens, in shaping what goes on in the community, but equally, presumably, because it's a community base and they're on your database, they'll come back for more, but not necessarily with the same organization or the same charity. So you kind of, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, that with those you're building both a habit of volunteering, which we all love, of course, but also a habit or a feeling that they can get involved in shaping their own communities, which I think is probably even more powerful from a citizen point of view.
Yeah,
Is that right?
definitely. So yeah, we don't move into a community by ourselves. We look to partner with other organisations and services, and embed ourselves within the sort of existing infrastructure, and then we grow out of there, looking through lots of mapping and lots of community listening events and community engagement events. We'll look to understand the sort of local needs of a community, and then look to how we engage people through those organisations and services, depending, I suppose, it's dependent often on the funding that we're receiving. What are the KPIs? Most programs have some key performance indicators or some key areas that you're looking to achieve and deliver through the funding. So depending on the funding, we will build a network then of organisations that will help us to deliver those outcomes. But those networks in themselves are collaboration spaces. So we look to bring those networks together to look at how they learn from one another, how they share skills and assets, how they overcome challenges and needs together. It's about building that sense of community with everybody involved and everybody sort of shaping that going forward.
And Rachel, has this enabled you to reach, or maybe let's put this differently, to bring people into volunteering who perhaps wouldn't have been involved in volunteering traditionally? We know there's a challenge, I think, well, certainly I feel I observe a challenge in the sector, that lots of us are talking about how we can reach different audiences, how we can make our organizations and our activities more attractive, how we can break down barriers to volunteering. I'm interested in how this community approach, or if this community approach is helping with some of that and getting new or different people involved.
Yeah, so as I said, the community groups reported last year that 33% of them had increased their volunteer diversity through using time credits to recognise their volunteers' time, and equally on the other side, kind of reported by volunteers themselves, over 43% of them over 43% nationally had were people that were new to volunteering or had seldom volunteered in the past. So really looking at how we support new and different people onto their sort of volunteer journey. And a lot of that is through focused work that we do as well. We kind of very much aim to work with people kind of very much in the heart of the community, where they belong, where they know people, through services that they're accessing, through community groups that they're accessing, and we support that journey. And as Chris referred to it earlier about building that sort of, we have So we use a digital platform that groups that we're working with are able to advertise their volunteering opportunities on. So when somebody's signed up to the platform, they're able to both search where they can volunteer and receive time credits, but equally then search where they use their time credits through the recognition network. So it helps to build, as Chris was saying, that habit of volunteering as people kind of build their confidence, and realize that there are more opportunities open to them. They're able to then begin to volunteer in different places as they become more engaged and more confident on their journey.
And presumably, if someone has a good experience, right, even if things change in their life and they stop, providing they've had that good experience,
Exactly.
actually, hopefully, it's something that they'll go back to in the future when they can. And yeah, it feels like being in the business of creating those really good experiences early on is so critical in developing those habits, because that benefits everyone, right? That's, it benefits the volunteer, it benefits the communities, it benefits organizations, it benefits people who receive the benefits of that volunteering activity. It feels to me like it's a kind of a win-win. It benefits the partners that you're working with as well. Fantastic, exciting
And
stuff.
Totally. One of the things that we also do often, especially where the sort of starting point for us is working within services. So in Haringey, for example, much of our work in Haringey is working in mental health and recovery services, and really using time credits to support service users to be recognised for their skills and strengths, and really support them on their journey, both to recovery, but also to enable them, peer-to-peer support within services, co-production and co-design of services, really supporting that experts by experience voice within services, and people's time being valued by time credits. But often when we're working in services, our commissioners will also fund us to build what we call a community network. So that's a network that sits outside of those services, that has volunteering opportunities very much in the heart of the community. So, be it a food bank, be it a charity that's got volunteering opportunities, what we're often trying to do is to move people beyond service. So somebody will start their volunteering journey in a service where they're supported, where they feel safe, where people know them, and as their confidence and their self-esteem grows, and they're moving along their pathway, the ultimate aim is for them then to begin to volunteer in their wider community, where they'll make friends, they'll make connections, they'll be valued for their skills and strengths within their communities. So we do a lot of work through our commission programme, moving people beyond service.
I think that's really interesting, Rachel. I was going to ask you a little bit about supporter journeys and how you help people along their journey of volunteering. And it sounds like you clearly do play a role, although it's not linear, in helping people map out and travel their journey into volunteering within the organisations you work with and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work that we do are through the service providers. So, providing training and support for service providers, running co-production and co-design workshops, helping them to kind of begin to map out different pathways, and then working through our sort of collaboration networks then, and events that we run, what we call networking events. We build the links between services and the wider third sector communities that then supports those pathways for volunteers.
Amazing.
Rachel, I'd be interested in your advice to an organisation or to a head of volunteering like me, or to anyone involved in volunteer leadership who's starting out on this journey of like involving people in communities. Like that, I think, can feel quite big and quite daunting, wanting to do it perfect, wanting to apply the theory of co-production absolutely correct and not miss anything out, or worried about getting it wrong. Where do we start? Like, how does someone like me get this going? If I wanted to start to learn some of the lessons or apply some of the great stuff that you've been able to apply at Tempo into other organizations.
Say start small. You don't need to do it everywhere across huge communities to start with. Start small, manage your expectations, and a small cohort of volunteers or people to start with, and just being open to asking questions, and receiving their feedback, asking them, how can, what does recognition look like for them? How would they like to be valued? How could they be involved in helping to design what good volunteering looks like in the organisations and the services that volunteer managers are heading up. But yeah, be open, I think, is key, and really value their voices and see them as the experts. They're often the ones volunteering for you. They're the knowledge. They're your knowledge bank. So listen and learn from what they will.
So what's the plans for the future, Rachel, in terms of growth? Is it something that you gradually expect to take over the whole of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland, or is it something that you want to sort of build the knowledge base that others can follow? Is it something you want to
Yeah.
license out? What's the future for Tempo and for this concept?
Yeah, so Tempo's had ambition to scale for a really, really long time, and I'm I'm newer in role as the chief exec. I think I'm about 16 months into my role now, and I've been doing a lot of that listening that I just was preaching about, to listening and thinking and reflecting on our journey so far, and for us right now, it's a year of consolidation. Or our next strategy is about consolidation. It's about going deep in the communities that we're already working in and really solidifying the impact that we're having, to create more pathways with deeper connections. We're going to be focusing on some key areas. Whilst we're strengthening our core, and those areas are health and social care, more working connected, creating more connected communities, but also exploring, doing more exploration around heritage volunteering, and looking at how can time credits help to diversify the volunteer base across heritage provision, but also having a real focus on working with more young people and their families, and exploring how together we might co-produce volunteering opportunities for young people and families. And key and underpinning all of that is more work around diversity, equity and inclusion, and how do we support new and different people onto that pathway to volunteering.
That's great, and I think that's very wise, isn't it, to concentrate on making sure it's as strong and as sustainable and scalable, well, yeah, not as sustainable as it can be in those local areas. I mean, it'd be very tempting just to go and be omnipresent everywhere. Actually, you want to do it well instead.
Absolutely. Perfect world would be that it would be everywhere, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think those strong roots and growing out of those strong roots is key. And our strategy is about growing out of the areas that we're in. So we tend not to do a sort of popcorn fashion everywhere, but another key part of our strategy will be developing more national partnerships. We've recently brought on National Trust, which is an amazing national partner, and we're working with them in Wales at the moment, with scope to then begin to do that across England. But growing those national partnerships is key, because then it makes it easier to kind of start and grow into new places.
Well, they'll certainly help you with the heritage volunteering plans, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. And listen, as I said, to Matt, listening is key. And we heard the challenge that some of the challenges that are happening, both across the wider volunteering network, but also specifically around within culture, heritage and the arts. And we feel we've done quite a lot of work within culture and the arts, and we feel like that the time's right for us to begin to do more of that in heritage as well.
I think it sounds like a really kind of, for me, to sum up, one of the things I think I'm certainly going to take away from this conversation is kind of really like the power of partnerships. It feels like Tempo at kind of at basically all levels is about building really effective partnerships, codependent partnerships where everyone wins. That's certainly something I'm going to be going away and think about. How can we build better partnerships in our volunteering structures? We don't have to do all of this ourselves. The answers are often in our communities, they're in our partner organizations. Sort of the skills and the knowledge is there. How can we be more of the convener, as it were,
Absolutely.
that Tempo is? How can we be in that space a bit more so everyone wins? And there's got to be
Totally.
an efficiency in that, I think. And that's something I'm leaving really inspired by. Let's make better partnerships. Let's share our objectives, share our opportunities, and create better outcomes for everyone, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think there are so many tools out there, and time credits is one of the tools that's in the box. That's what I say to people, but there are many. So find the right tool for you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely to hear more about Tempo, and in particular the impact that Tempo has on both the communities in which you work, the organisations you work with, but most importantly, the building the habit of volunteering amongst the people who get involved in your organisations. So, yeah, thank you very much, Ross. I imagine that many of our listeners will have taken many notes away, and some ideas that they will want to implement into their own organisation's activities. And I'm sure not too few of them will be in touch, Rachel, to see if they can get involved in Tempo directly in their communities. And I should imagine they'll be knocking on your door for support.
Well, Chris, another interesting podcast. We heard about the power of co-production, the power of community, addressing health inequalities, all wrapped up in what seems to be this really sort of exciting approach to volunteer recognition. And again, for me, as I said at the end, this real emphasis on the power of partnerships. Very consistent themes, I think. Some of the things we've heard from other organisations too.
Yeah, what I liked about it was, on the face of it, it feels very simple and transactional, but as you start to peel the layers back from what Tempo and Rachel are doing, it's actually a really deep, ingrained service in local communities, making some really impactful kind of forays into really building communities, as you say, tackling health inequalities, and really starting to build citizenship opportunities for volunteers and for individual citizens. And that sense of convening, bringing the various partners together and being, if you like, the glue that kind of holds that together. So I thought that was a really intriguing business model, and something that I don't think our listeners will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone else is doing.
I do think the innovation here, particularly, I mean, there's lots of innovation here, but there's a particular strand of this for me that lies in that convening. I think, how can we, as organisations, do more convening? Because I think sometimes it's easy for us to feel like we have to solve whatever our problem is on our own, or we have to, or we're in a market which is perhaps more about competing than collaborating. And actually, if we can if we can be in that convening space, a third C there, maybe that will be better for everyone. That's how we all win, potentially.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, on to the next podcast, and our next guest, we'll have to see who it's going to be.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, and thanks for your time, Matt. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.